Coming up in the news, business owners urged to rebuild smarter with the use of technology. Also, IRCA officials making a stop on Grand Bahama. And new vehicles arrive for the Grand Bahama Health Services. The Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Shashina Rowe-Parkinson. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news as the island's business sector struggles to rebuild, business owners receiving a bit of incentive today, and that's thanks to a tech summit at the Grand Lucine Resort. Those in attendance were the first to learn about the new Technology Innovation Grant, which was launched to assist small businesses in the rebuilding process. Now, as Jamila Mizik tells us, participants were admonished to rebuild, but with the aid of technology.
Several small and medium-sized businesses attending a tech business forum at the Grand Lucine Resort. Noting the importance of the workshop for businesses in Grand Bahama, Minister of State for Grand Bahama, Senator the Honorable Kwesi Thompson says the government thought that since businesses will have to rebuild in any event, they should rebuild smarter and using the latest technology.
We've invited persons like the Governor of Central Bank, who's going to be talking about their new digital currency. We've invited folks like Cloud Kareem, who is talking about how you can deal with your data in a more secure and digitally, and how you can do it by using cloud instead of doing paper and using this paper data. We also have folks who have been approved to do the e-wallet and digital currency, so that we can begin to encourage businesses to use the e-wallet and use digital currency as well.
The minister adding that the idea is to bring the small businesses together, tell them about what the government is offering, and encourage them to use digital technology. The Technology Innovation Grant was also launched.
What this is we are offering those businesses who have been affected by the storm here in Grand Bahama a grant that is used specifically for technology and used specifically for creating more innovation in your business. So persons here can get up to $25,000 if your business has been damaged, to go towards either replacing or upgrading technology. But we actually want to encourage them to use innovation when it comes to their business. And so today really is about what the government is offering for small businesses, how we can help them, and that if they're going to rebuild, then we have to encourage them to rebuild smarter using technology.
Now he says persons can apply for the Technology Innovation Grant through the Office of the Prime Minister or the Small Business Development Center. Shamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
Meantime, the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, or IRCA, the entity responsible for regulating electronic communications and electricity, bringing what they call a pop-up office on Grand Bahama. Top executives and directors will be available at the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce to hear the concerns of residents through tomorrow. Megan Shepard explains.
Executive Officer of the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, IRCA, Stephen Barreau, says that they want to make their presence felt on the island of Grand Bahama and throughout the family of islands. He says that these pop-up office meetings will ensure that their regulatory activities are brought to all of the islands on a regular basis.
We've established a series of pop-up offices, which basically means we bring our key members of our team to the island, and we're here and available to members of the public in Grand Bahama to make complaints, discuss IRCA issues, and generally to get a feel for how people feel about the sectors that we regulate. It would be remiss of me not to note that obviously we have some jurisdictional challenges in relation to the port area in particular. We hope that those will begin to be resolved during 2020 or early in 2020. In the meantime, though, we feel it's important to exercise what we see the law as telling us we are responsible for.
Director of Communications Carlton Smith, adding that they want to hear from residents, particularly post-Hurricane Dorian. He notes that services were interrupted in both the telecommunications and broadcast sectors, and this will give the authority an opportunity to receive feedback from both the service providers and consumers.
We get to hear how that service is being restored. We've been receiving reports from the various service providers as to the recovery efforts on Grand Bahama to see if the reports that we're receiving are in line with what people are saying that they're receiving on the island of Grand Bahama. So it also gives us an opportunity to better understand what are the challenges that people are facing in the telecommunications sector and broadcast sectors.
Director of Utilities and Energy, Siobhan Cambridge, adding that while they do have some jurisdiction issues, they are on the ground to liaise with all stakeholders and to get a feel of the situation on the island.
Having just gone through the Hurricane Dorian, the passage of Hurricane Dorian, and the damage that has happened to the local infrastructure, one of the things that we're here to see is what lessons can be learned in terms of resiliency and the rebuild and the development of all of the islands of the Bahamas. So it's not just about Grand Bahama, but we're kind of on a fact-finding mission that would allow us to improve lives through better regulation of utilities.
Now, Director of Corporate and Consumer Relations, Mavis Johnson-Colley, is encouraging residents to take advantage of the pop-up office and voice their concerns. She says that complaints should not always be seen as negative, but rather present an opportunity for improvement. She notes the areas of top concern on Grand Bahama.
Billing, concerns of the time it takes to have services restored when services have been disrupted, and not knowing where to go and the kinds of questions to ask, and not understanding the obligations on the part of the service providers. Yes, there are obligations that the consumer has, but there are also some obligations on the part of the providers to ensure that their service reach a certain standard, an agreed standard that has been set in conjunction with the regulator. To understand that, within a certain period of a disconnection, whether it's a wrongful disconnection or a disconnection with reason, that there's a certain time frame within which I can expect to have my services restored.
Now, pop-up hours will be from 9 a.m. to 12 noon through Tuesday, December 3rd. Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
Thanks, Megan. Meantime, some changes taking place in the upper house of Parliament as the Senate president has tendered her resignation. The announcement of her departure was made this weekend. President of the Senate, the Honorable Kay Forbes Smith, has resigned from that post and will now serve as the managing director of the Bahamas Disaster Reconstruction Authority. The nation's leader making that announcement during a press conference in the Capitol on Sunday. The Senate will now have to elect a new president, and in the meantime, Attorney Lisa Bostwick-Dean has been appointed the new senator. Bostwick-Dean was sworn in at Government House. Meantime, John Michael Clark will serve as chairman of the new Disaster Reconstruction Authority. Algernon Cargill will serve as vice chairman. Other members of the new authority will be announced soon. The leadership team for the new authority will work with the Minister of State, the Honorable Iram Lewis, to continue the reconstruction program for Grand Bahama, Abaco, and the Keys. The authority is responsible for the management of reconstruction and restoration in areas designated disaster zones. The authority is also responsible for establishing criteria, procedures, and processes for transitional housing, services, and assistance. Well, good news for the Grand Bahama Health Services as officials received 2 new emergency medical vehicles today. These are welcomed additions as 4 of the 8 ambulances that were in rotation were damaged during Hurricane Dorian. Hospital Administrator Sharon Williams says it has been a challenge servicing the entire island of Grand Bahama during emergencies post-Hurricane Dorian, and the new vehicles are vital to providing quality medical care.
We would have been donated these ambulances by a company called Dema Braun Cresslin. They would have liaised with the Public Hospitals Authority to meet our immediate needs. As you know, our ambulance fleet took a severe hit during the recent hurricane, and we would have lost 4 ambulances to flooding.
Williams adding that this could not come at a better time.
What we will do once we make the assessment of these is put them immediately in services, and then we'll be able to report to Nassau Public Hospitals Authority whether we have additional immediate needs in the emergency area. We do know that we had a significant loss in the rest of our transportation, so they're working with us in returning transportation to Grand Bahama to meet the other needs, such as the maintenance of facilities.
And still with news from the Health Beat, cervical cancer is reportedly on the rise worldwide and is said to be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of women each year. Tonight, an oncologist out of Florida is sharing new data when it comes to the treatment of cervical cancer. He says the traditional way of treating the disease may be more effective than newer measures. Megan Shepard explains.
Physicians at the 2019 Medical and Dental Educational Conference sharing best practices and cutting-edge research in the medical field. Gynecological oncologist Dr. Troy Gatcliffe presenting at the conference on the topic of the shifting paradigm of cervical cancer surgery. Dr. Gatcliffe says that in the Caribbean and West Indies, there is an increase in cervical cancer.
I think that's due to the prevalence of the human papilloma virus, which is the causative agent of almost all cervical cancers. And certainly in the islands, access to screening and early treatment remain a barrier to many women being picked up early, and their pre-invasive cancers such as pap smear abnormalities being addressed in a timely fashion. In the developed world, we are seeing some plateauing or maybe even the decrease of cervical cancer rates due to good access to screening and early care.
Dr. Gatcliffe notes that within the last year, data has been emerging, which suggests that the use of minimally invasive surgery is inferior to open surgery for the treatment of early cervical cancer.
The conventional wisdom had been that much like other cancers, such as endometrial cancer and colorectal cancer and so on, that it would be an automatic assumption that the oncologic outcomes for cervical cancer would be the same, whether you perform the surgery open or whether you perform the surgery with a minimally invasive technique. And of course, minimally invasive surgery has extreme benefits for the patients, such as less pain, less blood loss, faster return to normal activities, and so on and so forth. So we had been operating under the premise that minimally invasive surgery would be just as good as open surgery. But in fact, some studies have emerged within the last year that tell us otherwise.
He adds that early cervical cancer can actually be symptomless.
Unlike endometrial cancer, which has an early warning sign or an early warning symptom, which is postmenopausal bleeding or abnormal uterine bleeding, many early cervical cancers have actually no symptoms. So most early cervical cancers are picked up by one of the best screening tests that we have in medicine, which is actually the pap smear. The problem with the pap smear is that unfortunately a lot of women don't get their pap smear on a timely basis, and therefore these cancers are not picked up early.
Dr. Gatcliffe also commended organizers for hosting the annual conference following Hurricane Dorian.
But I really want to applaud the Grand Bahama Medical and Dental Association, and in fact all of the Bahamian doctors and all of the Bahamian staff that are here today for actually pushing through with this conference in the wake of the devastation of the recent hurricane. It's a testimony to the resilience of the Bahamian people and the spirit of moving forward with medical education and getting together, that this conference is actually happening here today.
Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
In other news, a near tragedy this weekend following a freak accident on East Sunrise Highway. Reports say a pump truck flipped over in the area of Mary Star of the Sea Catholic Church, and a gray car was severely damaged. Officer in charge of traffic, Superintendent Jeremy Henfield, says a pedestrian was also involved in that accident.
Two vehicles, a truck and a car, was traveling east along East Sunrise Highway. There was a primary collision between that truck and the car where both of those vehicles would have lost control. The truck would have overturned and rolled over, as you see, and the vehicle would have crashed into this tree. We're also getting another information that the pedestrian at the same time was walking again west along. That pedestrian was struck by the rollover truck. At this time, we don't have no report of any fatality. The injuries that we're getting right now is minor too, but there's no fatality at this time.
Now, he says preliminary investigations reveal that speed may have been a factor in the accident, and he is, of course, urging all road users to obey the traffic laws.
Speed kills. We all know that. So we just ask that you take your time, leave it enough time so you can get to wherever you're going to in sufficient time. We are just about to go into the Christmas season and holiday, and you know, the worst thing we want is anyone losing their lives during this time. I think Grand Bahama would have had enough devastation already for the year, along with Abago, and so we at the traffic will do the best that we can to ensure that, you know, our roads are safe. As you can see, throughout last month and coming right after the storm, you've seen a number of police all over the street. We've been doing a lot of static patrols, static checks, road checks, and this will continue straight on into the end of the year.
Don't go away, there's more news on the other side of the break.